Hello, I'm Jodie Stewart and I'm the Disaster Preparedness Coordinator for the Eden Community Access Centre's Disaster Preparedness Project. How much do you understand about how disasters are managed across the Bega Valley Shire? Would you like to know more about better preparing Eden and surrounding villages for future disasters? Tune in to Prepared for Disaster every Wednesday morning at 11, right here on 2SEA, as I share useful information and chat to good people doing great things in preparedness, recovery and community resilience. Prepared for Disaster. It's all about building stronger, prepared local communities, ready to face more frequent disasters. Welcome to the Prepared for Disaster program, a new program about communities and disasters. I'm your host, Jodie Stewart, and I'm the Disaster Preparedness Coordinator for the Eden Community Access Centre. I'll be joining you fortnightly as we undertake a series of conversations about disasters and the role that communities do and can play in response to increasing disaster events. This show is produced and broadcast on the lands of the Thawa people of the Yuin Nation. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present and to all First Nations people joining us today. I would also like to acknowledge First Nations sovereignty of their air, lands and waters, and that this sovereignty was never ceded. This is, was and always will be First Nations land. In this show, we will be discussing disasters and their impact. Some content may be distressing. Please look after yourself while listening. Or if you think this is not for you, you can come back to the broadcast in about an hour's time. The Prepared for Disaster program is part of the Disaster Preparedness Project. The Disaster Preparedness Project is an Eden Community Access Centre initiative. The project is funded through New South Wales Reconstruction Authority, formerly Resilience New South Wales, and is a 2-year funded initiative. The aim of the project is to bring the community together to develop a plan that can provide practical strategies for us to be better prepared for future disaster events, whether that be floods, pandemics or fires. Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Prepared for Disaster program. We have another fantastic show planned for you today with 2 very awesome and special guests joining us here in the studio. I'm joined today by our fabulous first responders, Patricia Daly, who is the Eden Unit Commander for the SES, and Peter Standen, who is the Group Officer for the Far South Coast. Peter and Patricia are joining us this morning to chat about the role their agencies play in disasters. So I'd like to welcome Patricia and Peter to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning to you both. Now, I like to start our interviews by asking you or inviting you to share your stories. So, Peter, I'd like to start with you. What is the Peter Standen story?
Well, good morning, Jodie and Patricia. Thanks very much for inviting me here this morning. Just as a bit of a background, I was raised in country New South Wales and educated in Sydney. But after a working life, I moved to Eden about 12 years ago and I joined the Eden Rural Fire Service as an interest and found that the organisation provided many opportunities to participate and to have something to contribute. And in particular, I enjoyed working with both the brigade as a first responder and also in the training areas that the RFS is involved in, all the way from bushfire fighter all the way through to crew leader and other types of training activities. I enjoy working with other agencies, and in particular Patricia's agency, because we do work together on a regular basis. And and that's one of the key things that actually gets me motivated in the morning when you talk about what passions you have. It is at the moment working with the Rural Fire Service and other agencies involved in helping to protect our community.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. Patricia, what's the Patricia Daly story?
Well, I've come from a little bit further away. I was born and brought up in Glasgow, a small fishing village on the Clyde, as Billy Connolly would explain. But I've always lived in cities until about 12 years ago. So in Britain, I met and married an Australian, and we eventually made our way to Sydney. where we lived for a number of years. And then about 12 years ago as well, I moved down to the far south coast to live in Wollumla. I love Wollumla. It's a lovely, peaceful space. And I'm down here. Originally, I was a member of the Bega SES unit when I first moved down, but I already was a member of the State Emergency Services. I joined in Sydney. I liked the idea of doing something for my community and being part of the helping force, if you like. So up there, I learned how to help people cope with the results of a storm. I learned how to pick up and use a chainsaw, which was a great thing for me as a city girl. It didn't come into my life before. And down here, I've continued to know and grow inside the State Emergency Service. The people, for me, are definitely a big thing, both inside the SES and, as Peter said, with working with the other agencies. During the fire, we were able to offer support by helping in the fire control centre and the radio room and logistics. And in our own area, getting to know people locally in the SES and getting to know new skills. Thankfully able to use some of the skills I brought with me too. But we meet people all through the zone and all through the state that you come across again and again at training courses or operations. So it's a lively place to be at times, and it's always interesting.
Awesome. And Eden's so very lucky to attract two wonderful people. I often get people in the chair that weren't born in Eden, but by happenstance or some other situation they end up here, and how lucky we are to have you both in the area. Now, Peter, I'd like to return to you. Can you just tell me a little bit about the RFS and what they do?
Yeah, thanks, Jodie. The New South Wales Rural Fire Service is one of the largest fire agencies in the world and in Australia in particular. It has about 70,000 volunteers. And if you're looking at the types of things the RFS does, it is actually a statutory authority of the New South Wales Government. Its main purpose, and I know we're going to be going on to talk more about this in a moment, but is really to provide some protection to the communities in times of risk and danger and catastrophe. Main areas that we provide that protection is through the management and control of bushfires, the situations where you have structural fires, particularly on rural properties. We also provide assistance and protection at motor vehicle accidents, and also assisting other agencies. And in this case here, we've worked with Patricia on a number of occasions in assisting with flood relief and also in other areas where SES have been required to provide their incident control at in certain situations. The thing about the Rural Fire Service, of course, is that they're all volunteers. They're not paid for what they do, but the people are highly motivated to try and help and assist the community, and also be involved in in particular, the firefighting operations.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Patricia, can you tell us a little bit about the SES and what your agency does?
Sure. The New South Wales State Emergency Service, to give us its full title, we're an emergency and rescue service. So we're dedicated to assisting the community, saving lives and creating safer communities. We're a volunteer-based organisation. We do have a small number of paid staff in the centres of Wollongong and Goulburn for us. But our volunteer organisation provides emergency assistance to the people of New South Wales, and we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year, so we're always there. In New South Wales, there are more than 10,000 volunteers across the state, and that's what makes this possible. So it's not just the same people all the time, but in small communities like Eden and beyond, it is the same people all the time. So for the Eden unit, we look after the area from about Merimbula all the way down to the Victorian border, and we go inland to Wyndham, to Wumba, and all the communities around those major places.
Awesome.
So, but we're all united, all the services, by our purpose of wanting to help our communities. We do a lot of training. We learn different skills or new skills when we come in, or we bring in the skills that we've used in our professional lives, perhaps. And all that is always useful. It's just merging and using all the different backgrounds to come together to a common purpose.
Awesome. Thank you, Patricia. So, Peter, can you tell me a little bit about your role within the agency?
So our role for the Eden Brigade, and I'll start at that level, is really to provide protection and assistance to the community in times of disaster. Our main focus, of course, is on fire, and then we also assist with management of other types of emergencies, including motor vehicle accidents and assisting other agencies, as I mentioned before. The key part of the role, I think, involves the area that we're responsible for within the Eden locality, and also we provide assistance to other elements of the Rural Fire Service outside of our brigade locality, and that includes the Eden RFS assisting areas like Womboyne, Kaya, Nevercote, Burrigat, Toowoomba and Rocky Hall brigades, and Wyndham as well, in their management of trying to control a fire incident in their own brigade locality. So we do work outside our own area, and we also provide assistance to the wider RFS by working out of area, where we'll travel to other locations throughout the state to assist other agencies in management of disaster. And that includes Eden Brigade participating in flood relief at Lismore, Mudgee fires, and grassland fires in the Monero area in the last 12 months. So we have quite a wide range of responsibilities to assist not only in our local area but also out of our area as well.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Peter. Patricia, can you tell us a little bit about your role as Unit Commander?
Sure. As Unit Commander of the Eden Unit, I'm responsible for leading our group of volunteers through the incidents that occur, and also the functional requirements of the unit, the day-to-day, making sure we're ready to respond when we're called upon. So as part of that, I'll oversee response for floods and storms. That's our main business, if you like, and to make sure that we're ready and we know what to do if a tsunami is called, and that's coming towards our shores with a bit of warning, hopefully. But we have a lot of operational support jobs that we might be assigned to. So at the Eden unit, as well as the floods and storms, we also respond for road accident rescues. If people are trapped in a vehicle, then our unit will be called to extricate that person, with the ambulance officers there overseeing the medical aspects and the police looking after the incident itself. So the New South Wales SES are also called upon for vertical rescue assistance and for bush search and rescue in some areas. And we do a lot of evidence searches as well, helping the police, rural and metropolitan, not just our unit, all the units. So again, that's part of the search and rescue area for looking for evidence related to either a crime or a missing person. So that's all something that we prepare for as well. So I oversee the unit to make sure that our members are well trained and qualified and ready to respond to all those different areas. So not everybody does everything. Some people prefer to focus on one particular area, so I'll encourage that and make sure that they have the training and the practice that they need to do that. And other people maybe aren't so interested, maybe try, but aren't so interested in the field areas, so I'll encourage and give them the opportunity to do something behind the scenes in admin or radio or stores or whatever. So lots of opportunities for people. I just have to be aware of what they're interested in and what they're capable of, which is not always the same. So it's a bit of people management as well in the unit commander role. So that's the main task, is ensuring that people are ready and prepared to be called upon whenever they're needed.
Yeah, and a diverse array of services that you provide as well within your agency. Awesome. We're going to take a little bit of a break now, and we're going to hear from Dolly Parton, Baby I'm Burning. Hello, welcome back. That was Dolly Parton and Baby I'm Burning. Now, if you're just tuning in, I'm chatting with our fabulous local first responders, Patricia Daly, who is the Eden Unit Commander for SES, and Peter Standen, who is the Group Officer for the Far South Coast RFS, and we're talking about the very, very important and vital role that these agencies play in disaster. Now, Peter, I'd like to return to you. Can you just talk us through what happens when your agency is called to respond to a disaster?
Yeah, of course, Jodie. Normally what will initiate a call for a response will be when people feel that there is a threat to their physical health, well-being, or possible injury, threat to life, or threats to property, and they'll normally do the call to 000, who will identify the appropriate agency to deal with that based on the type of incident and the location and who is actually responsible for that type of, or managing that type of incident under an incident control system. Once the call goes in, the incident will be assigned, and under a centralised control based in Sydney, it's all part of the emergency management process that's been established by the agencies to handle this type of life-critical incidents. The call goes out. We operate through a dispatch system coming out of Sydney. They'll determine which agency and which element of the agency is responsible for responding to that incident, and we will then proceed to gather and then deploy to the area or the location where the incident has occurred, and then take control of the incident and manage it from there. We are required to provide information back to the, and in particular the Fire Control Centre in Sydney, about what is actually happening in the situation and what actions we are taking. So, because the Commissioner of the Rural Fire Service is responsible for the incidents that have been assigned to the organisation, and therefore we provide information back and act on any follow-on directions that may be given. One of the key things about the Rural Fire Service, of course, is that once a brigade deploys to an incident and takes control, Fire Control generally will leave the management of the incident to the brigade or the incident controller, the officer in charge at that incident. So they'll make decisions about what actions need to be taken and whether or not to call for any support, including support from other agencies. We also work as part of a team with other agencies, and as an example, motor vehicle accidents come under the incident control of the New South Wales Police, and we work with them to provide any support that they require. We also support the Fire and Rescue New South Wales within the town limits and outside town limits where they have responded to structural and house fires. We provide support to them as a backup agency if they need any assistance. Also, when there are situations of flood or other natural disaster where the SES become the incident controllers, we are sometimes called to provide support to them, and we'll provide assistance at, to help with flood mitigation, protection of property and that type of thing. Once we have been responded to a call, we will assist the agencies or will manage the incident ourselves. The way we receive a call is that we either get it through a page or an app that we have on our phone. All volunteers within the Rural Fire Service have these call-out messaging systems which they respond to, and they notify that they are responding or not responding, and then we proceed to the incident. We provide post-incident reports back in to give an indication of what actually occurred, and that can include details and information about what actions were taken during the incident. For example, in a bushfire, it was either extinguishment or containment of the fire. So there is a deal of responsibility in reporting that we need to push up the line, because at the end of the line is the Commissioner who needs to be able to reply or respond to Parliament and inquiries that may take place. And so we try and provide as much information as we possibly can.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Patricia, can you talk us through what happens in your agency?
Yeah, we have two different kinds of response. The rescue response, which is life-threatening. I'll talk about that in a second. And the other kind of response is our main aim is the storms and floods. And what happens in that situation is a member of the public, a resident, will call our 132-500 number. And the first question they're asked is it life-threatening? And if it is, they're asked to hang up and phone 000 so they can get the fast response to the rescue. If it's a 132-500 job, then it's usually a storm or flood, and it might be a tree down across a road or a damage to the house with a roof blown off or whatever. So the call to 132-500 goes through to the State Operations Centre, who then task the appropriate unit and resource to the job that's being registered. The relevant unit is notified of a job in their area, and we'll dispatch a crew. And that's where one of the out of field roles we have is having somebody at each unit that can actually take that call and manage the unit call out. So preferably somebody that doesn't want to go out in the field themselves. And once we've got a crew together, they make sure that they have the correct resources and protective equipment, and they head out to the incident location. They'll assess the situation there and call for backup if they need it. And if necessary, they might have to refer the job to another agency if it's out of our scope. And that would be tree services or crane services or something like that if it's a very big job. Within the storm and flood capacity, we can manage that entirely within the unit if it's just one or two jobs. If it gets slightly bigger than that, if it becomes 10, 20, 30 jobs, then we open it up to the cluster, and our sister units at Bega and Bermagui will assist, and we'll all work together, the three units, to assist and put teams out for whatever is required across the cluster area. And if it gets even bigger than that, then it becomes a state or a zone or a state region-wide, and the control would necessarily perhaps move up slightly to get an overall look at what's happening in the field. When we have a very big job, we don't know that it's going to be a disaster initially. It starts with a trickle of one or two jobs, and then when you're getting to 30, 40 jobs, you're starting to think, oh, might need a bit more help here, and that's good. We can call in from out of area units across the state if necessary, and when necessary, as Peter mentioned, we also call upon other agencies to help us do things that their agencies can manage as well. So that's for the storm and flood response. If it's a rescue response, then it will have come through the 000. So our call will come via the police. Our dispatch systems all talk to each other, and we'll get called to a road crash rescue or a flood rescue perhaps. And in that case, response is quite different. All of our members get a page or an SMS message directly, and the rescue operators will just go. They'll just down tools and go, and they'll let the centre know by radio or by phone. And there's a bit of communication, just checking who's going and who's where and who's driving the truck and who's going direct, all that kind of thing. But again, it is the rescue operators themselves are ready to respond. That's again 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, every day of the year. So that's a big responsibility on their heads. But it works well.
Excellent. Both very tightly coordinated operations. Excellent. Now, a big part of both of your agencies is preparing the community for disaster. So, Peter, I was wondering whether you can tell us what role your agency plays in preparing the community for future disaster events.
Yes, Jodie. I think one of the important things for people to keep in mind is that the more knowledge and information you have about something, it can assist in reducing the anxiety if an emergency incident occurs or a disaster happens. And so one of the key things that we try to achieve is to provide as much information and advice to people as we possibly can through a number of media and other forms of communication to people. So having that information available to them so that people know what's going on and what to do about it is fairly critical to preparations of the community for future emergency situations and disasters. To do this, we undertake a number of both physical and communication approaches. In the physical approaches, we look at trying to reduce some of the risk in our area that we're responsible for. And one of the risks that I will mention, of course, is the risk of heavy fuel loads within the bush. We try and reduce that risk by conducting hazard reductions where appropriate, although unfortunately the weather hasn't been kind to us in the last period of time because it's still quite damp in certain areas, and so it's difficult to get hazard reductions underway, but hopefully things will start to improve soon. We also look at how we might manage the future risk that can emerge, particularly in relation to bushfires. And we do this through a process that we use called pre-incident planning, where we look at what the risk might be, assess the level of risk, and then determine what action we might need to take both before the emergence of the incident or the risk that is apparent, or how we will deal with it once the risk eventuates and becomes an actual incident. And that includes, such things as major bushfires and so on in our area. If we do some pre-incident planning, it helps us to then know at least what possible courses of action we may need to take if that risk does emerge. The other thing we try and do to assist with the community to be prepared is that we make ourselves available where possible at various community events through the activities of other organisations and departments, including Department of Education and community organisations as well. And if we make ourselves available to these events, we can discuss with people what their concerns might be. And it also gives us some visibility, because people can forget that, or they do not believe that there is a potential risk. If you make yourself available, it does then occur to them to come and have a talk to you about what they may need to do to help prepare themselves for in the event of a disaster or a problem in regard to emerging bushfires that are in our local area. So we do try and provide a fair amount of visibility where we can.
Yes, and you've certainly been very visible in our disaster preparedness project. We've called on both you and Patricia to our events and programs, and you've both been marvellous contributors. So, Patricia, how does the SES support the community to be prepared?
One of the ways of supporting the community is not just to wait for a disaster to happen. So we're constantly sharing messaging and safety advice all year round, including in different languages if necessary, through our website. But we want to try and help the community understand how they can equip themselves for future floods or storm disasters. We have a lot of those resources on our website, www.ses.newsouthwales.gov.au. That includes emergency plans, what you would put in a flood-safe kit, which is remarkably the same as a fire-safe kit. It's whatever you think you might need, either if you're going to be stuck in the house for a couple of days or up to a week maybe, depending on where you live, or if you're going to have to evacuate, what you will want to take with you. So do you have a list of things that you should have in the house and a list of things that you would want to take with you? Because when push comes to shove and you're at the front line of some kind of disaster, you don't think clearly. You need to have a checklist written down that you can actually look at. So our website will give flood and storm fact sheets as well for your area, and even tsunami mapping and flood mapping as well. You can look at the website and find out what possible evacuation areas are, and find out if your property's in one of those. Do you have to have a bit more than just an idea? Do you have to have a real plan of when you will go and where you will go? So for flood planning, some of the areas in our region here in the far south coast, we do have flooding that cuts people off down at Wonboyne up to Womba. And these people generally that have lived there for a long time, they're very resilient. They know what to do. They always have a pantry full of food that'll keep them stocked for a few days. But know what heights where your home or your business might be affected by floodwater. If you're new to the area, then speak to the locals that have been here for a while, or talk to the council. They have maps of likely flood levels when floodwater starts rising, either from rainwater or from inundation from the sea. So it's good to know about what's around you and find out how your house might be affected. We also, as an ongoing thing, we have now a new website that we share with the RFS, and so that all the hazard information goes into that one area. It's called Hazards Near Me now. It used to be Fires Near Me or Floods Near Me. They're both in Hazards Near Me now. And again, that's good. It tells you what the problem is. You can look at that through the internet or an app on your phone if you have one. It tells you what the problem is. If it's in your area, you can set up a watch zone. And at the moment, we're getting lots of alerts for fires because there's lots of hazard reduction burning, which is great. But in the future, when we come to the wet season, we'll get some flood information or some storm warnings, perhaps. So one place to go and look at the official information there. It's also good to know what kind of information is there, so that you're used to looking at it when you're calm and responsive. And the other way we help to prepare the community for future disasters is by welcoming new volunteers always, and making sure that they have the training to help them support themselves, their family and their community.
Awesome. So understand your risk, have a plan, very important. And welcoming new volunteers, obviously very vital as well. We're going to stop, have a little bit of a break, listen to a song. We're going to hear from Tina Turner, a very apt song indeed, I Can't Stand the Rain.
I can't stand the rain.
Welcome back. I hope you're enjoying our weather-inspired music. I'm having a very inspiring chat here in the studio with Patricia Daly and Peter Standen, two of our fabulous local first responders, and we're chatting about the very vital role that the RFS and the SES play in emergencies. Now, Peter, through the Disaster Preparedness Project, the community has told us two of its disaster priorities, and they are, one, communication between agencies during disaster, and two, education and information, particularly ahead of disaster. So how is your agency responding to meeting some of these needs across the state?
Yeah, thanks, Jodie. As Patricia mentioned earlier about the hazards near me, it is one of the key sources of information for people to be able to access online to find out what is happening and what is likely to happen in the future, and if there are any dangers or risks to them. So I think that is one of the outcomes from the series of disasters that we've had over the last 4 or 5 years, where we have much better access to what's actually going on. For the Rural Fire Service, I would recommend people just have the rfs.newsouthwales.gov.au, which is, if you have that stored as a favourite during times of risk or danger, then you can click onto it. It'll give you a lot of information about what's going on, including how to prepare. It has information there about survival plans, actions to take, things you may need to want to put in your go bags and that type of thing. Plus also how to find out other information, particularly if the disaster is occurring within our district or area. Also contained on that website is the fire danger ratings, which have now been modified and changed following a national agreement between emergency service agencies as to how they will change the fire danger ratings in particular. But also it gives information about alerts that come out to people, including such alerts as people receive advice, and on hazards near me it'll be under advice. If it becomes more serious, you'll have an alert giving an advice for watch and act, and then finally when things are potentially getting quite dangerous, you'll have emergency warnings will be issued. To monitor this, I recommend people look through looking at not only the website but also listening to radio and TV alerts. And if you're in an area of particularly high risk, there will be messaging coming through on people's phones, and they're able to do that. Just the thing about the fire danger ratings, I think everyone's aware nowadays that there's been a change. You'll have seen the new signs in the district, generally outside on the entry to towns or at the fire stations. The lowest rating is the white no rating. That means that there is no significant fire risk existing at the moment. We then have moderate, which goes into green. That's where you're encouraged to monitor what's going on in your area, and that includes accessing information through websites and other means. When it gets into high, that new rating is generally a fairly high risk fire danger rating or fire danger fire behaviour index, and that's when people should be ready to act. In other words, monitoring closely what's going on. And then as it moves into the next two areas of fire danger where it goes to extreme or into catastrophic. In extreme, you take action now. Make a decision about what you're going to do, hopefully from your previous planning and thought about what actions you might take. If it gets into catastrophic, essentially they're suggesting to you either leave now or you may get, you're putting your life and property and the lives of your family at risk. So they're the new ratings. You can find those on the website and they provide fuller explanations about what the ratings actually mean and the recommendations for what actions you'll take. If it starts getting into the higher range, please note that as you're driving in and out of town, check the fire danger rating signs, because it will not only have the rating on the day, but it will have an advice on a placard below the sign which indicates what action you might need to consider taking. If you have a plan and you've thought about what you're going to do, then I strongly suggest you implement that plan. And if you need advice, there will be contact points made available to the community for getting advice about what to do if you needed it.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. So yes, just to reiterate, Patricia, the community have told us a couple of their priorities: communication and education and information. So how is the SES addressing some of those priorities?
Well, as Peter said, from the reviews that happened after the fires and the floods of the last few years, we realised it was simplifying. The messaging was a good thing. So we've already mentioned a few times the Hazards Near Me app, as well as the fire warnings. The flood warnings will come through that now, and also tsunami alerts will come through that as well. And also, the New South Wales SES has simplified or changed its flood warning approach in New South Wales through the adoption of, again, a 3-level warning system. Same 3 levels as the other services. So it's the first level is just the advice alert, the second level being watch and act, and the third level being an emergency, prepare to evacuate, and telling you where to evacuate to and what areas. So, and they'll also use that warning system to tell you when it's safe to come back to your house after a flooding event. Our warning system used to be tied very rigidly to the Bureau of Meteorology flood information and which of their gauges they were able to issue warnings against. And in our area, that was only the Bega River. But we will now in future be able to have warnings for different catchment areas. So officially, we weren't able to give out warnings for, say, the Toowoomba Valley or the Wonboyne River. But now, as we build up enough information, as we start to build up information now, we'll be able to, in future, issue warnings for those areas as well, which we haven't been able to do in the past. But we do, a lot of our messaging and warnings do go out through either the app on a phone or the website, the Hazards Near Me website. But we do also, when it comes to an event, a storm or a flood, then we do also use other channels for information. Now, if you don't have a smartphone or access to the internet, it's important that you find out which other means of getting information relate to you personally. So ABC Local Radio is the place to go. So make sure you know what channel to look at and make sure it's on your dial, ready to go to, and that you have a battery radio able to use that as well. Also, we use social media for people that use social media, and we use also local papers and national papers as well. So as many different ways of getting the message out as possible. When we're having a large storm event or a flood event, then we do try and use all those different ways of communication at the same time. It will be the same message, just going out in different ways to reach all the people we possibly can. While the service is well prepared for heightened levels of operations, it's also important for people to take responsibility, to be prepared for what might happen to them in their household and family, and ready to look after themselves. As we've found in a number of big operations across the state, across Australia, that the days are gone where you could rely on the SCS or the RFS turning up at your property to look after you. Our disasters are getting bigger and more widespread, and so we have to all take more personal responsibility and be ready to help each other and help the community, albeit perhaps under the guidance of the emergency service agencies, but we can't rely on them always being there to help us at our front door.
Excellent, Patricia. Very important message. Now, the emergency services sector continues to grow and adapt in the face of increasing disasters with increasing severity and impacts. So, Peter, what do you see are some of the challenges that the RFS faces, and what are some of the opportunities?
I think in relation to our support to the community, one of the key challenges we continue to face, it existed before and will be existing in the future, is trying to get the community motivated to take an interest in, as the point that Patricia raised about planning and preparing to look after themselves, because it is not always possible to provide an emergency service at your own house or in your own particular area. We will endeavour to try and protect as much as possible, but if the community is interested and have developed a plan and are prepared, they can assist themselves as much as they can, but where that's not possible, of course the emergency service would try and assist them if they're able to. I think that's one of the challenges. The other one is to try and encourage people to do more planning about what they do. It is just a matter of sitting down with members of the family and friends at work and other people whom you have professional and social relationships with, just to have a bit of planning about what you'd do, what actions you'd take, and make your decisions about when you're going to take those actions. So I think that they are some of the challenges that we'll be facing. I think with opportunities, particularly for the RFS, we see opportunities particularly in the use of, or the increased use of technology to assist both in planning for what might happen during periods of major fires, but also for identifying, mapping, tracking fires, and then developing more information about what the fire behaviour is actually doing. The 2019 and 2020 fires were unprecedented in many ways, and I think the increased use of scientific research into fire behaviour resulting from that disaster would be of significant benefit, or will be of significant benefit to the Rural Fire Service. And it is possible that with the increased disaster events that are now taking place, I'm hoping that across other agencies as well, there is increased research into what is actually occurring during these disasters and how we can prepare ourselves for it.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Patricia, challenges and opportunities for the SES?
Challenges have been many. Since the end of the fires in 2020, New South Wales SES has responded to more than a dozen major weather events. So that includes floods, supercell storms and tsunami warnings as well. So that was obviously 3 consecutive La Nina events have fueled that. But the past 2 years alone have had thousands and thousands of, more than 180,000 jobs for the New South Wales SES across the state. a lot of them are flood related, and our volunteers completed about 6,000 flood rescues, some of them in the Bega Valley as well. We're not immune. We don't have the scale of the floods that they've had in western New South Wales, but we do still have people driving into floodwaters and going where they don't expect to get into trouble, but amazingly they do. So there's no doubt that weather patterns are becoming more severe, and so that affects our work a lot. It means that natural disasters generally are bigger, and they require a much bigger response from emergency services and from the communities as well. The community may well feel battered and bruised because we are getting more of these events. But there's an opportunity to engage and educate the community about the kind of disasters we might expect here locally. So locally here, our problems are storms generally. There are floods that affect a lot of the areas, especially the lower areas, of course. And we have to be aware that a tsunami may one day come our way as well. So we have to know what to do in that event as well. So we encourage all community and members to become involved in the agency, to either talk to us or join us about how they might prepare for all these different things. We have, when there's an event in Eden, like the Whale Festival, which unfortunately we haven't had for a few years, but they're coming up, the Fun Day, the Emergency Services Fun Day, and we'll be there and we'll talk to people and we'll try and demonstrate a few of our skills and our toys that we have in the truck. And we'll always have brochures for people to take away and have a look at in their own place as well. But we can't continue to serve the community as it does without new volunteers signing up. And that goes across the board for all the agencies. In the Sapphire Coast cluster here across the Bega Valley, we've got nearly 100 job-ready volunteers. So that's pretty good, it sounds like. But there's always room for more. And of course, not all these volunteers are always ready all the time. We all have work and family and travel commitments. And so if you've got some skills and you'd like to share them, then you're always welcome. And as I said before, the admin tasks are always good to do as well. But we have been building up our resources across the state. We're now better at getting ready for events. Sometimes it feels a bit like the boy that cried wolf. When there's a big storm event, we have people in place ready to go. So that means moving people around the state, having people travel out of area to where the biggest threat is seen. And having flood rescue operators ready to go, having people in the operations centre ready to man the phones and the radios, and we're all set ready to go so that when it does happen, we have people in place and there isn't the lag in getting people to travel after the weather starts. So it has sometimes mean that we've got lots of people in place, and then the weather has moved off the coast and it hasn't hit, which sometimes seems a bit of a waste of time, but we were ready to go. So we're getting better at preparing and working together across all the different areas of New South Wales.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Patricia. Now, our very last question this morning, and now this is a question that we asked of our Resilient Eden workshop participants. Peter, what does a well-prepared and resilient Eden and surrounds look like to you? What is your vision for a stronger, more resilient Eden and surrounds?
I think it develops on the theme that Patricia and I have been talking about throughout this morning. For me, it is about having a well-informed community, a community that's knowledgeable about what the risks are as far as disasters are concerned and how they might manage that. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But one of the themes I would like people to consider is the protection of vulnerable citizens within their community. There will be people with disabilities or aged members of the community who will need assistance and need to have someone keeping an eye out for them. So if people just note that in their community preparedness. But the final point I will make is that what we mentioned earlier, if people can prepare a plan for what they'll do and have had some thought about where they'll get information from and also be able to make a decision based upon what their plan might be, given what the risks are as far as the disaster is concerned, I think that will help people a great deal to be able to avoid risk to life and also risk to their own property and welfare. So, yeah, I think they're the things that indicate to me what resilient communities are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. Patricia, more resilient Eden, what's your
More
vision?
resilient. It's very similar to Peter. The idea that every household has a plan, either written or pictures or checklist or something for the whole family, not just the adults, the children, grandmothers, grandparents, whatever. They all know what they would be able to do in the event of an emergency, and they've got an emergency kit, of course. But also knowing your neighbours and their risks, and how you could, as a community, work together. And knowing for each household, knowing where to get their info. If they don't have access to the internet or a smartphone, then which radio station is it, and which newspapers. So.
Excellent, excellent. Have a plan and be prepared. Fabulous. Well, I want to thank you so much, Patricia Daly, the Eden Unit Commander for the SES, and Peter Standen, Group Officer for the Far South Coast. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today. I know we've run a little bit over time, but I've got some really fabulous announcements after this. We're going to hear from the Pointer Sisters with Fire.